Well, we've been waiting long enough for this episode, so without further ado, let's get straight into this episode of our Tanach Studies, Sefer Study, Archaeology Snapshot for Sefer Yirmiyahu, the book of Jeremiah, and we are now talking about Churban Bet HaMikdash, the destruction of the first temple, the end of Iron Age 2. There's so much to get into, so let's get straight into it. What is our goal for today? As you know, those four questions we got to cover, which is when it's happening, who are the main characters, where are they located, and highlights from history and archaeology, and boy, do we have so much to do. So let's get into it. Now, I don't mean to make light of Sefer Yirmiyahu. Sefer Yirmiyahu is a book which has so much tragedy in it. It's so much anguish, and not only the personal anguish of Yirmiyahu in the process of being a Navi and having all these difficult things that he needs to tell people who don't really want to hear it, but also the tragedy of what happened to our people after the 10 tribes have already been gone for such a long time, and now the final ember which remained, it was destroyed. And even after that, with Gedaliah ben Achikam, he's also killed, and the Jewish community which escaped him, that escaped the hand of Babylon into Egypt, was also pursued into Egypt and destroyed. It's a lot of bad news. But it's not only bad news. There are also some nevuot, there's also some good things. And overall, in terms of archaeology, it's such an exciting sefer that I'm just going to get excited because there's so much to say, so much to see, so much to show. And so I get excited about this, but I don't intend to make light of it. So let's talk about our first highlight, which is the end of Malchut Yehuda, the last kings of Yehuda. So just as an overview of the time frame that we're talking about, first of all, where? Most of our story is really happening in Yerushalayim, and this is a beautiful map, a colored map, which has the different colored sections referring to the different expansions by the various kings of Yehuda, starting with the red, which is David HaMelech, going on with the yellow to Shlomo, then we have Chizkiyahu in green, and then we have Menashe in orange, and right now we have all of this together at the end of Jerusalem at its height, pretty much downhill from the time of after Menashe, from Ammon. We have a little bit of uphill with Yoshiyahu, and then it's all downhill from there. So before I get into those details, I just want to introduce you to a very, very important resource, which is Uncovering Sefer Yirmiyahu, or in Hebrew, Divrei Yirmiyahu. A link to that is in the description. Our beloved Rabbi Yehuda Landy, who already put out several books on Tanach and archaeology, he's really making waves with this book. I highly recommend you check it out. It's available on Amazon, it's available online, and I'm putting a link for that in the description. So check out that book, and I'm going to be using a lot of pictures from there, and also for some other books as we go on. So just getting that out of the way, I want to just refer you now to the period of time of Malchut Yehuda, the last four kings. Behind me is a beautiful display of chairs representing the thrones of all of the kings of Yehuda, and behind it is the fortress of Malchei Yehuda in Tel Lachish. Why Tel Lachish? Because Lachish was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, and I'm going to get into Tel Lachish towards the end, so hang in for more Lachish stuff. Now, what's beautiful about this display is you get to visually see all of the kings of Yehuda and how long they ruled, with a nice pasuk which represents each one of them, something that they did, and so on. I'm leaning on Uziyahu, which is the beginning of the book of Yeshayahu, which we mentioned, but if you can look off to my right or to the left of the screen, you'll see the highest chair is actually Menashe, who ruled for 52 years, the longest ruling king. After him we have Ammon and Yoshiyahu, and Sefer Yirmiyahu actually begins with Yoshiyahu. So Yoshiyahu was a king who ruled for 31 years, and he was killed in the Battle of Carchemish. We're going to get to that very soon. And after him are four kings. Two ruled for 11 years, two ruled for 3 months, so we really have 22 years. So after Yoshiyahu, 22 years until the end of Malchut Yehuda, and then it's all over. And the big players, the pressure on the geopolitical scene is really Egypt from the south, who wants to control the area and regain their power after the decline of Ashur. And then we have Bavel, who's the new bully on the block, who's taken over Ashur, destroyed Ashur, and is about to go destroy part of Mitzrayim as well, though not really invade them like Assyria. Now, the big idea here is that the Navi is constantly rebuking those people who enjoy these videos and don't smash that like button. So go ahead and click that like button. It just takes a second, and if you just take a look at how many views you have in relation to how many likes you have on all the videos I'm going to be telling you about soon, you're going to wonder, how is this possible? Such amazing videos. I wish I would have known about this. I love looking at YouTube and looking at these videos, and I would love if the YouTube algorithm would know to suggest more. How will it know to suggest more? Hit that like button. So go ahead and do that. Thank you. Let's move on to our story. So Sefer Yirmiyahu really begins with Yirmiyahu's first nevuah, which has to do with this tragedy that's about to come from the north. And the king of the north is actually Nebuchadnezzar, and then his son Nebuchadnezzar, or Nebuchadnezzar. And mitzafon tipatach hara'ah, evil is going to come in from the north, which is, of course, actually directly to the east. However, since the only way to get through the desert to Eretz Israel is actually along the Fertile Crescent, so it's actually the entrance point is from the north. The entry point is north, so mitzafon tipatach hara'ah. This is kicking off Sefer Yirmiyahu. It's all about what's going to be happening from the north. Now, this enemy from the north we're going to talk about, Nebuchadnezzar, actually was the crown prince in the time that Nineveh was destroyed in 612 BCE, 2,600 years ago. Nineveh was actually destroyed. As we have Babylon rising, we have Nebuchadnezzar, and then his son Nebuchadnezzar, the crown prince, goes to, after the destruction of Nineveh, he goes to Carchemish. Now, Nineveh was burnt so thoroughly that all of these baked clay cuneiform tablets, of which we're going to see more, and we've seen a lot of them before, turned into glass. That's how powerful this destruction was. So you're looking at a tablet from Nineveh, which was destroyed with the destruction of Nineveh. We mentioned the palace of Sancheriv earlier, and we saw that his face was chopped off in the throne room, which is in the British Museum. It was chopped off by the Babylonians and the Medes, Madai, the Medes who are north of Persia, as they came and destroyed the palace. Now, Ashur-balit was the last king of Assyria. Assyria is already struggling. It's not even clear if they have a king anymore. But at this point, we have the involvement of Paro Necho, who is the king from Egypt, the 26th dynasty, which was actually founded by Ashurbanipal and Esarhaddon, his father. They're the ones who basically conquered Egypt, the Assyrian kings who conquered Egypt and established a new dynasty, getting rid of the what were known as the Kushite dynasty from Eretz Kush, the Nubians. So we have Tahaka Melech Kush, Tirhaka, who helped Chizkiyahu, all that story which we talked about twice. So this is a cartouche of Paro Necho found in Carchemish. You see Carchemish is a splatter here on the map on the Euphrates River, Al-Nahar Prat. And the beautiful story here in Tanach is that you can actually understand the story, the peshat, the actual meaning of the psukim better when you know history. Because when you read the story, it sounds like the Battle of Carchemish is actually about Paro Necho going to fight against Ashur al-Nahar Prat, which makes sense because the two hate each other. But actually the enemy of the enemy is my friend, because the Assyrian Empire allies with its enemy, Egypt, in order to fight against Nebuchadnezzar, whose lion-glazed brick from Ishtar Gate in Babylon you are now looking at. So this is the fall of Nineveh as the backdrop to what's going to happen now in the time of Yirmiyahu under King Yoshiyahu. Now, right after Paro Necho, who is defeated by Nebuchadnezzar, the crown prince, and then eventually the king, we have the successor of Paro Necho. His name is Paro Chofra. You're looking at a statue of him from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. He's known there as Epres, but it's all a pronunciation. It's Paro Chofra, who Yirmiyahu talks about. He's the one who we're going to get to later with Yehoyakim, who sides with him against Bavel. Some more cartouches, royal signatures of Chofra, just so you know he's there. Now, this is the backdrop. Let's get into Yoshiyahu. Yoshiyahu HaMelech dies tragically because he got involved in foreign affairs. And in essence, what Yoshiyahu and Yirmiyahu, the Nevi'im, are constantly trying to tell us, besides smash that like button, is to stay out of foreign affairs. Stay out of the dealings of these big world powers. Egypt, Babylon, Assyria. Don't get involved, and you will have a chance to survive. And we constantly have these dreams of grandeur, as Han Solo said, I'm just away for a short while, and everybody has dreams of, or illusions of glory, right? Why do we have these illusions of glory? Just be a mamlacha shfela, or as Yirmiyahu says, serve Melech Bavel and things will be okay. Even once you got involved, there's a way out. So Yirmiyahu is always trying to help us get out of trouble. And Yoshiyahu, for the reasons brought in Chazal, that he thought everyone were tzaddikim, and therefore the bracha, the blessing that cherev lo ta'avor be'artzachem, a sword should not even pass through your land, right, won't even happen. So he thought that he can stop Paro Necho from just passing through the land on the way to the Battle of Carchemish, as mentioned in Sefer Yirmiyahu, and also in Divrei Hayamim. And Paro Necho says, why are you bothering me? This has nothing to do with you. So a nice drawing, artist rendering of the Battle of Carchemish, where Ashur and Mitzrayim join against Bavel and lose. Now, here's Paro Necho. Now, after Nebuchadnezzar is going to win, we're going to see what happens later, but here's the battle. This is just from the Dat Mikra, Tanach, Atlas Bible Atlas, and it shows you the red path of Paro Necho going up to Karkemish. And you have, in very small letters, you can see, look carefully, and actually in a small black arrow, you have Yoshiyahu trying to block Paro Necho at Megiddo. Tragedy, and we have the fall of Yoshiyahu, which according to Chazal, who say that Yirmiyahu wrote also Megillat Eicha, Ruach apenu Mashiach Hashem nilkad b'shchitotam, asher amarnu betzilo nechye bagoim. He was the best and the brightest. He was the one. He could have done it. He had so much potential, and he just ruined it because he couldn't stay out of foreign affairs. He could have helped us survive, and the reason for this is because of what's called a power vacuum. Now, Professor Oded Lifshitz of Tel Aviv University, you're actually going to see him later, Professor Oded Lifshitz calls this period of time a power vacuum, and the fact that Yoshiyahu had the ability to establish a strong Malchut Yehuda and to expand again and to rebuild the country after all of these tragedies of Malchut Ashur is because of the power vacuum created by the decline of Ashur, the decline of Assyria. And because Assyria is declining, that leaves the space for Yoshiyahu to grow. He doesn't have to pay these exorbitant taxes anymore. You can rebuild the economy. And then he gets involved in foreign affairs, which brings Egypt in and then brings in Bavel. So he shouldn't have gotten involved, but he dies. But he could have saved the situation had he stayed out of foreign affairs. Now, the fact is that Paro Necho was not happy with the rebellion. He kills Yoshiyahu, and when he comes back from being defeated by Bavel, by Nebuchadnezzar and the crown prince Nebuchadnezzar, he appoints another king named Yehoyakim. Why Yehoyakim? It's actually Eliakim, but he changed his name. Changing his name means now you are loyal to me. I changed your name. That's what they would do in Mesopotamia. So Yehoahaz was the son of Yoshiyahu. He was appointed by the people temporarily for 3 months, basically, as Paro Necho was busy. But when Paro Necho comes back, since he controlled this area, he was defeated by Ashur, but because we got involved, he now took control and he appointed a new king who would be loyal to him and then to his successor, Paro Chofra. Now we have the story where the Navi Yirmiyahu comes and he writes a Megillah and he has it read before Yehoyakim, who's sitting in his winter palace, and he reads the story, which is basically perhaps Eicha, or perhaps telling him what's going to happen if you don't be loyal to Bavel and you stop relying on Mitzrayim. He rips up the letter and throws it into the fireplace, and everybody there is like shocked. What is going on? Like, he just refuses to accept. So Bavel comes in. At this point, Nebuchadnezzar rises to become the king of the Babylonian Empire, and Paro Necho is defeated, goes away basically, and Yehoyakim, in the 4th year of Yehoyakim, which is the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, his year of his ascension, Nebuchadnezzar takes control of Yehuda. Why? Because Bavel was taking control of what they won after the Battle of Karkemish and the fall of Nineveh. What did they win? Well, everything that Egypt controlled. Egypt controlled Yehuda because we got involved. So he comes in, and now Yehoyakim needs to be loyal to Nebuchadnezzar. But Yehoyakim has other ideas. He wants to lean on Egypt, which according to Rav Shakeh, but also the Navi, Mitzrayim is a mishenet kaneh ratzutz. It's basically a hollow reed, which if you lean on it, it'll puncture your hand, it'll break. You can't rely on them for support, which is indeed true. That's exactly what happens. So let's first get into the detail. He's in his winter palace. Now, we have this monumental capital known as a proto-Aeolic or a palmet sort of capital shape, which is the hallmark of royal Judean building in Yehuda. It's also been found in the Transjordan, also been found in Malchut Yisrael and Yehuda. And recently, right next to my house in Almona Netziv, they found 2 or 3 beautiful ones. This was also found in Ir David. This is a very important icon. It's the image of royal building of Malchei Yehuda, and you may be familiar with it from the 5 shekel coin. So I just brought that in because while I don't know exactly what the winter palace of Yehoyakim was, this is royal Judean palace building, definitely from the time of Yehoyakim. The question is, how far early can you push it back? Now, the person present, one of the people present was Shaphan. We know Gemariyahu ben Shaphan. He is a scribe. Shaphan is one of the royal scribes who are showing up constantly in the story. And on top here, you see a seal impression, which was impressed by a ring, by a chotam, and it has the name Gemariyahu ben Shaphan. We found the seal of Gemariyahu ben Shaphan. It's in the Israel Museum, and we found many more of such seal impressions known as bula. and there's a video about it in the description, so check it out. And there's really so much good stuff in the description. Just check out those videos. You'll just have so much fun learning about this and what there is to see in archaeology. Now finally, Paro Chofra comes to the aid of Yehoyakim, who rebels against Nebuchadnezzar Melech Bavel, but Nebuchadnezzar Melech Bavel was too powerful, and it was basically an Egyptian army of mercenaries. They didn't have the spirit. They didn't really want to fight against Babylon. You know, you get close to Babylon, and then you see the snarling lion of Bavel. The snarling lion. Oh, what's happening to my words? And that's it. They run away. So Yehoyakim is left on his own. He dies during the siege, and his son Yechonia or Yehoiachin becomes king as an heir to Yehoyakim. He's supposed to serve Bavel, but he's of course rebelling. But after 3 months, he listens to Yirmiyahu. He lifts a white flag and he opens the gate. And that is known as Galut Yechonia or Galut Echarash Vehamasger, which is really the craftsman, or as Chazal say, the spiritual leadership of Am Yisrael, of the Jewish people, were actually exiled with Yechonia and transported in bulk all the way to Bavel. You see that orange area? We're going to get to that area soon. That's called the El Yehuda, the Jewish area. But this entire map is from the Bible Lands Museum, a special exhibition about the Jews in Babylon called Al-Nahar Bavel, by the rivers of Babylon. And it's about archaeology relevant to the destruction, as well as the new discovery of tablets from this area known in the Babylonian documents as the Jewish area, Al-Yahudu. So we're going to get to that later, but Galut Yechonia happened 11 years before the destruction. And 11 years before the destruction, Yechonia surrenders and is taken and paraded into Bavel, probably the Ishtar Gate, with those lines which we spoke about at the end of Yirmiyahu. Remember, at the end of Yirmiyahu, actually the end of Melachim Bet, we spoke about the tablet which mentions the rations given to Yechonia and his children. It even names some of the people. It's a fascinating tablet to learn about, but we don't have time to talk about that. Let's talk about the exhibition book, By the Rivers of Babylon. This is a very important exhibition, and there's a link not only to the exhibition, but also to the Bible Lands Museum Jerusalem website and a virtual museum visit of this particular exhibition. So check it out in the description. It's really exciting. But what's exciting about this is that when Yechonia and the people from Yehuda, the higher echelon, the upper class, the strong leadership, right, were taken into Bavel, Yirmiyahu sends them with parting words, and he says, Bnu batim vashevu nit'u ganot v'ichlu et piryan. I want you to rebuild your economy, build up yourselves in Bavel, do business, build houses, plant trees, have children, have your children have children. Build the Jewish community. כי בשלומה תהיה לכם שלום. דרשו את שלום העיר אשר הגליתי אתכם שלמה, ודרשו בעדה על השם כי בשלומה, והתפללו בעדה על השם כי בשלומה יהיה לכם שלום. I want you to go to your shuls, so to speak, and say a Misha Berach, a prayer for Nebuchadnezzar. Why? Because this is the kingdom under which you are now going to thrive. And therefore, the MO, the modus operandi of Jews in exile is we pray for the leadership, because Ki bishloma yeh lachem shalom. When they prosper, so will you. These documents found from that region called El Yehuda are Jewish documents, some of them written in cuneiform, some in Hebrew, of Jews several years after Galut Yechonia, doing business, owning houses, trading, all this cool stuff, and the exhibition is full of that, so check the description. But the point is, we actually followed the words of the Navi, and this goes on all the way to the Persian period. Some of these documents are from Koresh and Kanbuzi and all these other kings. Fascinating. We're seeing the Nevuah of we're going to succeed in Bavel, doing well. And those who rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar did not do well. Now, one more thing which Yirmiyahu says, and this is part of that Nevuah, and it's also read as one of the Haftarot on Rosh Hashanah, is Od tit'i kramim ba'arei Shomron. Don't worry about the destruction. We're going to come back and we will plant vineyards in the hill of Samaria. In other words, the destruction of Yehuda is small compared to the destruction of Israel. Nevertheless, we will repopulate Shomron, repopulate the Malchut Israel, and rebuild, and it's going to be expressed specifically through vineyards, grapevines, and making wine. And this is our family friend Hillel Mann, who lives in Beit El, and he has Beit El Winery. I mentioned him earlier, so I'm going to link in the description again to an article I wrote about rebirth of Samaria, wine, and prophecy, and also you'll see an article, a link to Hillel Mann's Beit El Winery. But the point is that the Nevuot are coming through. This is some of the nechama, even though it's not like the nechamot of Yoshiyahu, it's much shorter, but one of the nechamot is we will rebuild. And so the emblem of the regional council of Shomron used to be, they just recently changed it, is Od Tit'i Kramim Beharei Shomron. This is the prophecy we are seeing come through. So Galut Yechonia is really how we survived. The Galut of Tzidkiyahu was a disaster because Tzidkiyahu constantly rebelled against the Babylonian king, trying to side again and again with Egypt, which was helpless. Now let's get into the last part, which is Tzidkiyahu and the destruction. So Tzidkiyahu was actually a weak king, and the reason that he was appointed by Nebuchadnezzar is because Nebuchadnezzar thought, since he's weak, he's not going to rebel against me. He just left like the weakest of the people, and yet Tzidkiyahu did not have a backbone. And you can see him struggling. He's throwing Yirmiyahu into the pit, beating him up, throwing him in Chatzar HaMatara while he's trying to say, the Babylonians are at the gates, I'm trying to save you guys, just listen. And he confides with Yirmiyahu in private. And we even have, check out the video in the description, Bor Chizkiyahu, a pit which is presumed to be maybe the pit which Chizkiyahu was thrown into from the city of David. Lots of great material there. I wish I could get into it in more detail. But he's in secret saying, what am I going to do? I'm afraid. I don't know what to do. But don't tell anyone that we spoke, because I'm supposed to look like I'm siding with the Egyptians and against the Babylonians. And what are the people going to think? He's a wimp. Unfortunately. In other words, I hate to say that, chas v'shalom, he was a melech tzaddik, but he did not have a backbone. He could not stand up to the political pressure of all of these Nevi'ei Shekel and all of the ministers who are saying, make Judah great again. And he's like, yeah. And what about Babylon? Oh, we're going to be fine. And no, we're not going to be fine. Oh, you be quiet. And we're going to persecute you and not going to let you speak in public. We're going to delete your social media accounts. We're going to block you. We're going to shadow ban you. You're not going to be able to say anything about the dangers of Bavel. I wonder if that sounds familiar. Anyway, so in the Israel Museum, there's a beautiful collection of all these seals. You can see them right here on rings and seals that you put on your finger. Some of them are necklaces. And indeed, in terms of Yechonia, it says in Yirmiyahu, Im Yechonia melech Yehuda kechotam al yemini. If he will be like a right hand seal, like a seal on my right hand, because you wear the seal on your right hand and you stamp things. So this is a chotam. This is a seal. It's a metaphor which is used a lot. We may talk about more seals in the future. But I wanted to point out to you that in the story of Tzidkiyahu, when Yirmiyahu is warring against the impending doom, the Babylonians are already marching towards Yehuda. They're at the gate. There are these people who are sent to speak to Yirmiyahu, to sort of placate him, even though, they don't mean a word of it. So you see on top here the bulla, the impression of Gemariah ben Shaphan, but the two below here are a fascinating story. And this is the story of four ministers sent to speak to Yirmiyahu, to kind of sound nice, even though, they don't mean a word of it. And one of them is Yehuchal ben Shelemiah, one is Gedaliah ben Pashchur, and there's two more. Those two names out of the four ministers sent by the king to talk to Yirmiyahu during the siege were found. You're looking at these impressions, the bulla from their personal rings found in an administrative building in the city of David, and it's 2 out of 4 of their names. And so the excavator of Hebrew University, Professor Eilat Mazal, said, should she find number 3, she will never publish it because no one is going to believe her. Isn't that incredible? Now let's see some more inscriptions which have to do with this exact time in which Nebuchadnezzar is marching against Jerusalem, and that is the Babylonian Chronicles. I think this is Babylonian Chronicle number 12. Don't catch me on the word. However, these Babylonian Chronicles in cuneiform talk about every step of the campaign of Nebuchadnezzar onto Eretz Yehuda, through every country he went through, and based on that you can actually draw a map of his route and see what he did and what he destroyed. And we're going to see that Yerushalayim is the last to be destroyed after Lachish and Azekah. We're going to get there very soon, but you get the idea. We know so much about this period of time from the aggregate of archaeology that we have found. And so Tzidkiyahu ends up running away during the siege, and he runs through Derech Sha'ar HaChamotayim. This is probably it. It's part of the City of David National Park Complex. Don't have the time to get into all of it, but really check out the videos in the description and check out Yehuda Landy's book. It's really, really important to know Uncovering Sefer Yirmiyahu. It's available in Hebrew and in English. You can order online. You can find it in bookstores because it really goes in depth into all this archaeology. So this is the wall, perhaps, where he escaped from. And he gets killed. It's a terrible story of how he dies, and he dies on the way to Bavel. Now, the last cities to stand before Yerushalayim is destroyed are Lachish and Azekah. אל לכיש ואל עזקה וחיל מלך בבל נלחמים אל לכיש ואל עזקה כי המה נותרו ביהודה ערי מבצר. These are the last standing cities, which is why I have the article below, Lachish, the last stand, with some of my experiences from excavating there. I'm going to show you some pictures soon. And so Azekah is destroyed, then Lachish is destroyed, and then Jerusalem destroyed 586 BC. That's a very important date. We've seen 3 of them so far. We've seen the fall of Nineveh, 612, Karkemish, 605, Yerushalayim, 586. Dates that are worth memorizing. Now, Azekah is destroyed. And after Azekah is destroyed, they can no longer have their signal bonfires to communicate with the other cities. And so we have the famous Lachish letter in the British Museum, Lachish letter 4, which says, Ki lo nir'eh et Azekah. We can no longer see Azekah. Azekah has fallen, and then Lachish is also destroyed. And we have the destruction of Lachish as well. So after that, Yerushalayim is, of course, destroyed. Now, what I'd like to do in the next short session, because we're almost done, is to just show you some highlights from the destruction of Azekah, Lachish, and Yerushalayim. Let's get into it. So first of all, Azekah. Did I not mention Professor Oded Lifshitz? Well, here he is. I was digging there last summer or 2 summers ago. I don't remember anymore. I think it was last summer. I went there, I dug with my friend Erez, and we spent the day there digging. We found lots of stuff. I actually have ashes from the destruction of Azekah by Sancheriv, but that's not Nebuchadnezzar, so I'm not showing that. And this is Professor Oded Lifshitz, Tel Aviv University. And of course, you can see that it was a social media sensation. We found this, we found that. It was a lot of fun. So this is Azekah. Moving on to Lachish, you can see the road to Lachish. I took these pictures last year as well. And here we are at the foot of Lachish. My father was guiding the tour. And on top of Lachish is a model of a very large-scale model of Lachish letter 4, both sides. So you can read it with a timeline. It really is well done. You should really go and visit Tel Lachish. They've really made it into a beautiful visitor site with so much to see. So this is Tel Lachish. And after Lachish is destroyed, Yerushalayim. And we found a lot of the destruction of Yerushalayim. This is from the city of David, but also not 2 minutes from my parents' house in the old city is the Israelite Tower, which is a front of the battlefront between Bavel and Yehuda. You can see the ashes, you can see the arrowheads, you can see the sling stones, and so too here in this area in City of David. And this is from the Babylonian Museum book, and you can also see similar pictures in Yehuda Landy's book. And this piece of City of David shows you the ashes as the excavators were digging. Their face was dirty with the ashes from the Churban of Bet HaMikdash. It's such a moving experience to getting your hands dirty with the destruction of our own people. It's really, really moving. It's really moving. And some of the things that were found there are these arrowheads and sling stones. And we really get to see the destruction. And in fact, one of the really kind of gruesome, disgusting, but also cool discoveries is they also found in that area around the city of David, from the destruction, they found a latrine. No, not that latrine. Go away. This latrine. A stone toilet. Now, from an analysis of the stone toilet, they found that there are remnants of several types of bacteria which are the product of hunger. In other words, yes, I'm not going to get into the phosphorus and how they did all this microarchaeology and testing all these chemicals, this very, very difficult to find residue with advanced technology, because, yeah, talk about having a dirty job. This basically shows you the last stages of Yehuda because we succumbed to the hunger. And this shows you people's bad... You get the idea. Moving on to the last ember of hope, Gedaliah ben Achikam. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you may have not noticed because I was very, very smooth in doing this, but we just covered the Arba Ta'aniyot. We have Asara B'Tevet with the siege of Nebuchadnezzar. We have Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the breaking of the walls. We have Tisha B'Av, the burning of the Hechal. And then we have the last ember, which is the words of Rambam in Ilchot Ta'aniyot, HaGachelet Ha'achrona, the last ember of hope, which could have been brought back to life and brought back Malchut Yehuda. That was Gedaliah ben Achikam, who was appointed as governor of Yehuda by Nebuchadnezzar Melech Bavel, killed by Ishmael ben Netanyahu, was appointed by Baalis, the king of Ammon, murdered, assassinated, and that was the last hope. All the other Jews run down to Egypt. So you can see here No Ammon, Nof, Tachpanches. These places in Egypt on the map are places which are, they also mention Eretz Patros, which is Upper Egypt, which is further south. So you have the Jews who run away. They think they're going to get away from Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar ends up killing them there. So it's very, very tragic. We could have survived if we listened to the Navi and listened to Gedaliah saying, just serve Melech Bavel and it's going to be fine. So here we have, everyone's in Bavel. We have the very few people left. And Baalis, this is a bula which mentions Baalis actually, Baalis Melech Bnei Ammon, who appoints Yishmael ben Netanyahu actually has royal blood, so he says, I am a claimant to the throne. Who's this Gedaliah ben Achikam? And he goes and he murders him in the place called Mitzpah or Tel Anatzpah. There's a couple opinions as to where it is. Murders him, destroys our last chance of hope, and then we go into Bavel, into Galut. And so with that, I'm going to end. Our next episode is going to be in Bavel, Al-Nahar Kevar, with the Maaseh Merkava, the beautiful visions of Yechezkel ben Buzi Hanavi in Babylon. That's going to be our next meeting. And so until then, I want to say thank you so much for watching. And please like, comment, subscribe. I can't actually comment on this video. But anyway, be in touch, follow Tanach Study, and I will see you next time on Sefer Study for Yechezkel.